Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new episode of Beyond Mirage. Today, we have with us Captain Naveen Nagappa, who is a Kargil War veteran and fought courageously in the 1999 Kargil War. He was commissioned on December 12, 1998, and allotted 13 JAK RIF unit. And in January 1999, he moved to Sopore for country insurgency operations. He sustained injuries in a grenade attack when army lobbed grenade on his bunker. But more about coming your way with him directly. So welcome Naveen sir to the podcast and web series of Beyond Mirage.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for giving me this opportunity on being this platform called Beyond Mirage. It's really an honor to be part of this event. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. So the first thing, sir, I would like to start with, like, what was your motivation behind joining the Indian Army?
Okay, Jay. To be very frank, I was not that hardcore military person. Uh, it's just that to begin with, I being a South Indian, I hail from a place called Hubli, which is in the northern part of Karnataka. 20-25 odd years back, there was not too much of awareness about the defense forces. So I
Hmm.
was also equally clueless about it. Now the everything is at the touch of a button. You type for options and you'll get 100 options. You'll select one of them and go into depth and read and educate yourself. But those were not those days, where everything was at the available at the click of the button. So that basically I would call it lack of awareness. I didn't know anything about the army. It is quite obvious that if you don't know anything about it, how will you be fascinated about it? It was that
Hmm.
kind of a thing. But to tell me about the background, tell me about my background. Uh, I was sort of a sports person. You mean to say you name a sport, I was very good at it. In our school, we had a volleyball team, we had a cricket team, we had a kabaddi team, and I was too good in all of these games. So to say, I was an outdoor person, not an academic oriented person. So there was naturally an inclination to do something outbound activities. It so happened in my PUC, that is plus one and plus two. That is the time, all that, full of josh, schooling say uniform hat gaya, to, you can attend classes, you can bunk classes whenever you want. With all that josh, I went into my plus one and plus two college, which is called as PC Jabin Science College, which is based in Hubli. Now, there, I came across an NCC officer, although I was not part of NCC then.
Hmm.
When I came across this NCC officer, I got fascinated. The way he used to conduct himself, the way he used to behave, the way he used to command. Everything. I took a liking for it. The way he used to walk, the way he used to talk, the way he used to dress up. Immaculate dresses he used to wear. I thought कि मतलब भाई बंदे में दम है. एंड देन 2 साल कैसे निकल गए पता ही नहीं चला, बिकॉज स्कूल से बाहर आए थे, कॉलेज पहली बार देख रहे थे, यूनिफॉर्म का झंझट नहीं है, कब जाना है कब आना है, यू कैन बंक क्लासेस एज यू लाइक. तो 2 साल ऐसे ही निकल गए. जस्ट दैट दैट एट द बैक ऑफ द माइंड आई हैड दैट कि मतलब इंजीनियरिंग करना है, बिकॉज ऑल माई रिलेटिव्स वेर देयर, एंड कुछ ऐसे चीज करना है जाकि मतलब द कंट्री विल बी प्राउड, माई पेरेंट्स विल बी प्राउड. And then I passed my plus two and then went to do my engineering in mechanical engineering from a place called Davangere. And the college was Bapuji Institute of Engineering and Technology. That is the time, the idea started forming that, yes, I have to, join the defense forces, because again, I came across an NCC officer who was, a class apart. You look at an officer and you straight away want to imbibe the qualities, straight away you want to, emulate, you want to do the same thing what that person is doing. As I told you, I was outdoor person. I did a lot of camping, trekking, and all during my engineering days. And that is the time he used to narrate the stories of war. That an NCC officer used to narrate the stories of war, and that took a fascination for me. I was, बाद में वो जुनून और जोश ऐसा बढ़ गया. I never thought about anything else apart from the defense forces. All I wanted was I wanted to don the olive greens. I wanted to don the army uniform, and then I tried hard for it. And there are a lot of my school college mates who did engineering together, passed out. None of them wanted to join the defense forces, but I, for one, wanted only to join the defense forces. Because चीज आप दिल से चाहोगे तो भगवान भी आपको आशीर्वाद कर देगा. First attempt, first attempt SSB. There are a lot of people who attempt 10 times but don't get selected. It is just that, I went to a service selection board, which is again in Bangalore only.
Hmm.
I went there with an open mind. The day I went there, it was sort of a cultural shock to me. Cultural shock in the sense, my previous batch, which had around 80 people, was washed out. None of them had got selected. And the day I entered, I could see that there are around, my batch is also was about a strength of 80, and most of them were from northern part of India and really familiar with the defense forces. There, a lot of them were from defense background. As a result, they knew what's going to happen on the first day, what's happened going to happen on the screen, how the screening is going to happen, and everything they were aware. But I was clueless. I did not know anything, and and I went through the rigor of a selection procedure for 6 days. I got selected, and another 6 days of medical. I went through. Mighty thrilled. I came out of the Indian Military Academy. I would like to share one thing. When I came out of the service selection board selected, I gathered all my friends who were staying in Bangalore. We had just completed our engineering. A lot of that was the time when 97, 98 was the time when the defense sector was, I mean, the IT sector was opening up. Management sector was in boom. So all my course mates were into, trying to do some courses, software courses, preparing for CAT and whatnot. When I got selected through service selection board, I called for a party, and then we met in the dhaba. And the I had by then till then I had not told my friends that I'm joining the defense forces. And I made an announcement that I've been selected for Indian Military Academy. I'll be going for training. And mind you, those days the army was not very well paid. So the
Hmm.
first thing the friends trying to tell me was, Naveen, what are you doing with your life? Look at us. Because engineering those days, 25 years back, completing engineering distinction was a good thing, and that sector were opening up. You had good chances of, going abroad, making your life, leading a luxurious life.
Hmm.
That's why my colleagues who had done, my course mates who had done engineering together, all of them saying, Naveen, what are you doing with your life? Look at us. We are preparing for CAT. We are preparing for, we'll be, going to we are writing GRE, TOEFL. We'll be going to USA, doing our MS and whatnot. I had only one thing to tell them, and that was, I may not have at the end of my career, I may not have a big fat balance. I may not have a luxurious car. I may not have a big bungalow. I may not earn much, but I'll earn at least 100 salutes a day. That put an end to the conversation, and the party carried on. That's how my journey to the defense forces started. Yeah, Jay.
Wow, amazing, sir, amazing. And sir, you've talked in between about the war and the stories that the professor narrated to you, which say gave you that inspiration and motivation to actually go into the Indian Army. So, sir, you have fought one of the most historical wars, that is the Kargil War. So, would you like to, sir, tell us something about the war and how was your experience basically?
There are a lot of things to talk about the Kargil war. Lot in the sense there are plenty of things I can. I am not fond of writing. Otherwise, I could have easily written a book on that. Nevertheless, my experiences of Kargil war. Yeah. Uh, where do I start from? January 1999. After being trained for 1 year in Indian Military Academy, Dehradun, I got commissioned as a lieutenant into a unit called 13th Battalion Jammu and Kashmir Rifles. And Jay, let me tell you, 13th Battalion Jammu and Kashmir Rifles, what a unit it was. What a fantastic set of officers we had. The kind of grooming I underwent when I went to Sopur, where the unit was located. January 1999, I got commissioned in December 98. January 1999, I go and join the unit, which was based in a place called Sopur, which is around 50 odd kilometers from Srinagar. And if you guys are aware, Sopur is a place where there's a lot of militant activities. It is known as hotbed of militancy. A lot of militant activities there. So January 1999, I go there, and what luminary of officers there. Now, fantastic set of officers. The way I was groomed for the next 5 months, January to July 1999, July 99, or rather mid May tak, अगले पांच महीने we were into counter-insurgency operations. There are a lot of activities which are happening. There are a lot of actions which are happening. Many ambushes we conducted. Many militant hideouts we busted, and they groomed me properly. The unit groomed me properly. And come mid-May, that was the time the Kargil war started, and our unit, 13th Battalion Jammu and Kashmir Rifles, was tasked to vacate the place called Sopur and then move towards the Kargil sector, move towards the war area. So 48 hours was the time given to us. We wind up in 48 hours. We collect our arms, ammunitions, we wind up everything, all the materials which are required to launch an attack. Everything is mustered, and we start moving towards the Kargil area. In the sense ki, matlab, we left Sopur, we crossed Srinagar, we crossed Zojila Pass, and then we went to Kargil and deployed ourselves. Now, when I'm narrating these experiences, there are a lot of people who ask me, Naveen sir, matlab, you were in a particular place and you had to move to a place where the war is actually happening and war may anything can happen. How did you muster that courage? How did you muster that, courage to go into the wars area, war zone? Jay, what you should understand, what you guys should understand is, Indian Army did fight one of the fantastic mountain warfare battles which has ever been fought, and you also should know the background of Kargil war. The background of Kargil war is Srinagar to Leh highway is a stretch of about 400 odd kilometers. There are a lot of hillocks out there, a lot many hills there. It's not humanly possible to occupy all the posts, all the hillocks or all the mountains. It's not possible to occupy. So what Indian Army does is we occupy some vantage positions. We occupy some vantage hills. When I say vantage, you occupy those posts from which that highway is visible. And those peaks are occupied. They are called as man-maintained posts. When I say man-maintained posts, it means if there are 10 people sitting on the hill and guarding that hill, watching that highway, there are another set of 10 people who are required on a weekly basis to fetch materials for them. In the sense, they'll have to carry food, arms and ammunitions, medicines, and whatnot. They have to walk physically up the hill, deliver it, and then come back. It is a weekly affair. So that's why it's called as a man-maintained post. Now you see that area, that Kargil, Leh, Ladakh, up ahead of Zojila Pass, there's intense snow which happens. And at a certain point of a time, it so happens that it's humanly impossible to traverse that area, to travel that distance, deliver items, and come back. So what we do is we do something called winter vacated posts. When the snow starts setting in, when the snow starts falling, that is the time we vacate those posts and come down. And as soon as the snow starts melting, we again reoccupy the posts. This has been happening over ages, over years. It's been happening. As Indian Army does it, so does Pakistan. They also vacate their posts, go back, and as the snow starts melting, they reoccupy the posts. This was no unsaid rule, no convention which was signed, no agreement which was signed, but it was a gentleman's agreement. Although there is nothing gentlemanliness about the Pakis, but still it was a faith and a trust which has built over years, and we were following that. Little realizing that in their 1999, they backstabbed us. It has again got some reason, or again got some background that a year back we had conducted nuclear blast. Pakistanis also had conducted a nuclear blast. As a result, there were international sanctions on us, and that is the time our the great Prime Minister of ours, Mr. Vajpayee, had took that Lahore bus diplomacy, went in a bus to Lahore and tried to extend the hand of friendship, but we were betrayed, severely betrayed. And when this friendship, while we were extending a hand of friendship, that is the time the Pakistanis were sending the militants as well as those regulars into our posts. And it was in the year 1999 they came and occupied our posts. When Indian Army came to know about this, that the peaks have been occupied, Indian Army had little intelligence then. We came to know that some peaks have been occupied. That is the time Indian Army started gathering intelligence. Started sending a reconnaissance team. When I say reconnaissance, reconnaissance is basically intelligence gathering. They are not meant to fight the war, not fight the battle. They go there, go as close to the enemy as possible, watch them, observe them, gather intelligence. What is the extent of occupation? How many people are occupied? What is the peak that they are occupied? What are the arms and ammunitions they are carrying? This is all known as intelligence gathering. These are all known as reconnaissance mission. So the first team which went for reconnaissance, because total lack of intelligence, total lack of what's happening, we had just started the phase of intelligence gathering. So team left by Lieutenant Saurabh Kalia and four of his men, they start moving towards the post called Bajrang post. They were from a regiment called Forjat. They try and go as close to the post as possible. That is Bajrang post के पास वो चढ़ते जाते हैं. And unfortunately हमें से कुछ ज्यादा इंटेलिजेंस पता नहीं था, तो ये लोग चढ़ते गए, and ultimately they reached a place where they were sort of trapped. And these were just 5 guys, Lieutenant Saurabh Kali and 4 of his men. But the enemy sitting on top of that feature were about 80 in numbers. So these people sighted them, led them inside the trap, and once these people walked into the trap, they started firing from all sides. These 5 of our men, just carrying limited ammunition, because they had to go there, gather intelligence, and come back. They fought valiantly till they could. That weapons and arms and ammunition supported them. Ultimately, it so happened they expended all their ammunition and they were taken prisoner of war. A prisoner of war they were taken, and mind you, guys, they were prisoner of war for 21 days. Although we are a signatory to Geneva Convention of treatment of prisoner of war, so are Pakistanis. But the way they handled our men, it's a shame and a disgrace to any army that one army could do this kind of a behavior with another soldiers who were captured. 21 days later, guys, 21 days later, when the bodies of these 5 Indian soldiers, was handed over back to the Indian army, not only Indian army, the whole world was shocked. The whole world was shocked to see their post-mortem report. The post-mortem report said, the injury these guys had sustained during those 21 days of captivity and severe brutal torture. Their skulls were fractured, their eyes were gouged out, their lips were cut, tongue were cut, teeth were broken, hot iron rods were pierced into their ears. There were cigarette burn marks all over the body, and even the genitals were not spared. You name a bone, it was cracked, it was fractured, there was a hyaline fracture. Imagine for 21 days, how could these people sustain and tolerate such kind of inhuman behavior? It for me, for Captain Naveen Agappa, although any soldier's loss is a loss, but for me it was more personal because Lieutenant Saurabh Kalia was my course mate. We had trained together. He was a good friend of mine. We had commissioned together. 12 December 1998, we both got commissioned. I went into 13 Jakrif. He went into Fojat regiment. So that was beating a real blow for me to take. But once these 5 bodies were handed over, Jay, the whole complexion of the war changed. It was the Indian army felt, the harder you hit us, the stronger we are going to bounce back, and bounce back we did. What happened for the next 50 odd days was a saga of grit, determination, bravery, and sacrifice. But ultimately resulted in every inch of the territory which was occupied by the Pakistanis was taken back from the Pakistanis. Not only that, I would like to tell, look at the irony of the situation. Look at, juxtapose those things and see, let's see what Pakistanis did to our soldiers and what the Indian army did to their soldiers. I told you about Captain Saurabh Kalia and their 4 of his men, how brutally they were tortured. No exaggeration, you go to YouTube today and search 0.4875 Kargil war. What you will see is Pakistani soldiers whom the Pakistanis refused to take them back. They were buried on 4875, the feature I got hurt, the feature where Captain Vikram Batra attained martyrdom. On that very feature, you will see that Pakistani bodies, Pakistani soldiers' bodies were cremated with full military honors. Maulvi was flown, Maulvi was taken to that feature. All that prayers were done, and they were cremated with full honors. What I would like to say is, Indian army does not win just because we are strong. We are superior in number. We win because we are morally and ethically correct. We follow the legacy which has been left by our seniors. We follow that. We follow the traditions. We follow the customs. We follow the conventions what we have signed, and we always take a moral high ground. And that is precisely the reason why Indian army wins against Pakistani each and every time, irrespective of what they have done to our soldiers. So having said this about the Indian Military Academy, I would like to sorry, about Indian Army, I would like to share my experiences of Kargil war. 30th Battalion Jammu and Kashmir Rifles launched 2 attacks. One is attack on point 5140. The first attack was on 19th June 1999. Now a word about attack on point 5140. Trust me when I say this, the feature was occupied, was captured, was retaken back from the Pakistanis by two brave and gallant officers. One was Captain Vikram Batra, the other was Captain Sanjeev Singh Jambal. What a fantastic attack these guys carry out. In flat 48 hours, 48 hours, the feature was occupied. All the enemy out there were decimated, were thrown out. The bunkers, the sangars, were all of them were destroyed. And what I would like to tell here is, any small pain which we have, any small stomach upset, be it headache, whatever small difficulty, pain, agony we have, we want to get rid of it at the earliest. That is our intention. दौड़ के जाओ, डॉक्टर के पास ले लो, दवाई ले लो, get rid of that pain. You have some uneasiness, some comfort, you want to get rid of that. But imagine a personality, leading an attack on point 5140, braving the bullets. Any bullet can hit you, and that's end of it. Any step you take, a shell might land, and you're off. In spite of all these difficulties, fighting incessantly for almost 48 hours without food and water, and doing all this after occupying that post, if a personality, if a person stands there on that feature on which he is occupied and says, "Ye dil mange more," you can imagine what kind of a personality he was. I was talking about Captain Vikram Batra. That is the kind of personality he was. You all would have seen those interview in. I was there in the part of the tent in which Barkadar takes an interview, and Captain Vikram Batra says, "My chaps wanted, there should be more bunker, there should have been more enemy." Such an apt conversation we had that day. We had a hearty laugh. We were after that interview was over, we were communicating amongst ourselves. Had it not been the government order that you will not cross LOC, you will not cross the line of control, probably Captain Vikram Batra would have rushed across the border. Probably took his men across the border and did some wonders. Yeah, that was on point 5140, 19th June 1999. And for having won that feature, there was jubilation all around, there was happiness all around in the unit, there was celebratory mood. But at the back of my mind, I was thinking, oh God, why I did not get this opportunity? I also should have been there in the battlefield. And God has been very, very, very kind to me. I go to the selection center, get selected in the first attempt, get a unit called fantastic unit called 13th Battalion Jammu and Kashmir Rifles. I joined in January 99, and the war is there to perform, to prove your mettle, to prove to the world that you are made of nerves of steel. And मैं तो सोच रहा था कि भगवान मेरे को क्यों नहीं मौका मिला, भगवान ने मेरी सुन ली शायद. And the next attack which we had to give attack was on point 4875. And it was God's grace again that I had an opportunity to lead on 4875. Now let me tell you of 4875. 4th July 1999, the D-Day, what we call the D-Day, was 4th July 1999. That means we had to commence the attack on 4th July. And when we have to attack a feature, 4875, you would be wondering, what are these 5140, 4875? Let me tell you, there are so many hills, there are so many hillocks out there. Not every feature can be named. You would have heard about Tiger Hill. One odd features have been named, but not all features can be named because of sheer magnitude of those, their large volume. So what we do is we identify a hill by its altitude. When I say 5140, it's 5,140 meters above sea level. And 4875 is obviously 4,875 meters above sea level. That's how it's marked in the map, and that's how we identify that feature, and that's how we attack that feature. When I say a feature, it's not that it's on the top of the feature. There are few enemy soldiers sitting there. It's not so. It's a huge massive hillock, wherein there are a lot of ridge lines. There are a lot of ridge lines converting into the peak and the pinnacle. So wherever there is a possibility of the enemy or the attacking soldiers following that path, they would have built bunkers and sangars. So we have to clear one by one, and then they reach the pinnacle. So imagine 4th afternoon, I had lunch with my men, trying to motivate them. You have to itna josh par raha tha ki, this is, we are going to create history. It's a lifetime opportunity, once in a lifetime opportunity. We have our words, our name will be written in golden words, and all that stuff. Trying to motivate my men. I had lunch with them. Sham अंधेरा हो रहा था. अंधेरा होते पंडित जी ने हवन किया, and we were all set. अंधेरा होते लास्ट लाइट पे हमने अटैक शुरू करना था, चढ़ाई शुरू करना था. अंधेरा हो गया, and then my team was around 120 men, Charlie Company 120 men. And our unit worker, 13th Battalion Jammu and Kashmir Rifles, has a war cry. And before doing any sort of an event, or do it on a routine patrol, routine get together, our war cry is Durga Mata ki Jai. We always call Durga Mata ki Jai before commencing any show, any event. So 4th July, when the sun had set in and the darkness was on, that is the time, till then probably we had, uncertainty, fear of uncertainty, care and concern for the society. Parents ka kya hoga, mujhe kya ho jayega, what will happen, will we, how many casualties, all that fear of uncertainty is there. But once we were all set, checked our weapons, checked our ammunition, what we are carrying, radio set checked, or signal checked, all that setting were done. And after that, when I said Durga Mata ki Jai, and in unison, 120 people behind me standing Durga Mata ki Jai. Oh by God, what an electrifying atmosphere it was. Uh, oh, that cannot be expressed. Durga Mata ki Jai, 100 bande ek saath bolna. I'm sure the Pakistan is sitting on top would have realized as attack is going to come on them, and we really created havoc among those people. So 4th July we started for the attack, and as I told you, it's not that it's one bunker which we capture and we won for it. So there is a series of bunkers we have to clear one by one. The 4th night we start the attack. Imagine, guys, imagine. 4th night we start the attack. 5th day, 5th night, 6th day, the war was on. Incessant fire was on. For me, every inch of the territory we occupy, that was important to me. One boulder, we are here, and the other boulder is here. We run from here to that boulder, fire, dash down and crawl. We crawl, we run, we go down, firing against the enemy. There's somebody which is giving covering fire from the left flank. We attack from the right flank, and we stay there. And from the another on that side of the right flank, they give covering fire. We rush towards one border. We neutralize, bunkers, sangars. That was the spirit which was going on. 4th night se leke 6th afternoon tak we kept on fighting. Imagine, that is the time my commanding officer comes on a radar set and tells me, Naveen, 4th afternoon was the last time we had lunch. It's 6th afternoon, 48 hours. Believe me, 48 hours. We did not have anything. He comes on the radar set and asks me, Naveen, 48 hours आपने कुछ खाना नहीं खाया. Should I send you some food? तो मुझे पता था कि 48 आवर्स में फाइट करते करते एमिनेशन कम हो रहा था. एमिनेशन had started depleting. तो सिग्नल बैक आई, सेंड सिग्नल स्टेटिंग दैट कि सर आप खाने की चिंता मत कीजिए, मुझे एमिनेशन की कमी पड़ रहा है, एमिनेशन कुछ ज्यादा एमिनेशन भेज दीजिए. तो थोड़ी देर के बाद व्हाट आई सी इज कैप्टन विक्रम बत्रा along his team of carrying some arms and ammunition, he comes and joins. And that was a sense of jubilation कि कैप्टन विक्रम बत्रा आ गए तो देन ये तो मतलब केक वॉक हो जाएगा, अभी तो हम उनके छक्के छुड़ा देंगे, all that types. But on the hindsight, what you should imagine is 48 hours. How did we survive without food and water? Yeah, you should understand. What I'd like to communicate to the youngsters is physical strain is just a state of mind. If you feel you're tired, you're tired. If you don't feel you, if you tell yourself that you're not tired, you're not tired. If you tell yourself you're tired, if you start getting that feeling, getting that inclination, you get tired. It is not the physical strain which drains you out. It's the mental strain which you have to fight. The mental, no, that really drains you. Mental stress, mental strain drains you. When one of my soldier was shot in the legs, both his legs injured, I'm putting on a stretcher and sending him back. He says, साहब मैं मुझे माफ कर देना, आखिर तक आपके साथ नहीं लड़ पाया. That is the time you feel the bondness. You wanted to, in spite of getting hurt, you wanted to stay with me and fight the war. A shell had landed quite some distance apart, and one of my soldiers was severely injured. A splinter had cut open his stomach. Whatever had come out of his stomach, we are trying to put it in and trying to bandage it. Just to check the blood flow. And very well knowing, if he has to get some decent medical treatment, it is at least 5 to 6 hours of travel down, and the chances of survival are very, very, very dim. But still, when he says कि साहब मैं जिंदा तो रहूंगा ना, अपने बीवी बच्चों को देख पाऊंगा ना, I was totally drained emotionally. But as an officer, you have to carry on the battle. Now coming about the food part, believe me when I say this, 48 hours maybe कुछ ऐसा लगता है कि हमें खाना चाहिए, but what we do then? Even in the month of July, you will find that the mountains are snow capped, and the upper layer of the snow, generally we walk on that, we run on that, somebody getting shot, blood has oozing out. shelling has happened, it's all blackish. So what we do is we scoop out the upper layer. The upper layer is taken out, and the lower layer of ice, which is relatively fresh, that we used to put in the most, so that I get to get a feel that I have eaten something. So this is how we carried on with the attack. And once Captain Vikram Batra joined, we started taking turns. We started taking turns, and he used to attack. I used to give him covering firing. He used to go and occupy that boulder or a bunker. Then he used to plonk on that. He used to give me covering fire. Then I used to run ahead. Such that strategy was being followed, and we kept on occupying one bunker, another bunker, another bunker. By 7th early morning, we had reached a place when there was only one enemy bunker left. Had we occupied that, 0.4875 would have been ours. Captain Vikram Batra was down below. I was in the last but one bunker with an AK-47 in my hand. On my right was the big boulder was there, and on the other side of the boulder was the Pakistani's last post. So whenever I got an opportunity, I used to climb that boulder, shoot at them, circumvent that. I used to go around that boulder, fire at them, and then duck back again. So 7th early morning, what they do is they lob a hand grenade into the bunker which was sitting. A hand grenade, I'm sure you would have seen in movies. ऐसा pin निकाल के
Finger.
फेंकते हैं ना, ऐसा वाला hand, yeah, hand grenade. They lobbed a grenade into my bunker. So the design of the hand grenade is so that you remove the pin. Actually, is removed by hand. Movie में ऐसे दिखाते हैं. It's removed by a finger, and you lob a grenade. And once you lob a grenade, it has got a time lag of 4 seconds. The idea is if you lob and if you immediately blast, the person who is going to lob the grenade is gets hurt. So you lob the grenade. There is a fuse. It goes there, drops, 4 seconds time lag, and then blasts. That's how the design is. And generally, the killing area, they say, if a grenade falls here and blasts, anything around 5 to 10 meters will be shredded, torn apart into pieces. Such a grenade lands in front of my feet. Now, the options which are available to me was I get up and start running. So then the Pakistani sitting on top would have easily taken a pot shot at me. I would have been a sitting duck. So that was not an option for me. I didn't have the time to crawl because I had to crawl against the bunker and then go towards the bunker entrance to move out of the bunker. So that option was also ruled out. The only thing which I left was I had to pick it up and try to lob it back. I had to flung it towards the enemy. Now imagine, guys, if you have to throw a ball, if you have to throw a stone, you need a proper swing. You have to swing the arm only, then the grenade or that object will go and fall that far. But in my case, I was sitting in a constrained space. The bunker was too narrow with the place I was sitting. I had picked it up and tried to lob it back, but unfortunately, it hit the boulder, rolled back, and then fell in front of my feet again. Guys, I so clearly remember that grenade hitting that boulder, the sound it made, the way it rolled back, the way it came to halt, the sound which we made after falling, everything I clearly remember. And when the grenade rolled back, I would have probably lost 1 to 2 seconds of that and 2 more seconds to go. Believe me when I say this, I'm not dramatizing. I have seen death at a very close quarter. Now the grenade falls back, and then I realized, Naveen, you are no more. And in those fraction of a second, let me tell you, it was like everything flashed in front of my eyes. The picture of my parents, the picture of my brother, my sisters, my childhood, my college mates, it was like everything flashing in front of my eyes. I had only one prayer in my lips. I knew I'm not going to survive. I knew my death will cause a lot of pain, a lot of agony to my parents. They will be devastated. But imagine if I sit like this, keep sitting like this, the grenade blast and the entire impact will be taken on my body, and everything will be blown apart. What will they send home Naveen as? Some muscle pieces, torn muscle pieces, some bone pieces, put in a gunny bag and sent home. Will my parents ever excuse me? At least I should give them an opportunity to see my face for the last time. That was the only prayer on my lips. I prayed to God, God, let my face be intact so that my parents get to see me for the last time. And I jumped to my right. The moment I jumped, the current took off. There was a huge intensity blast. And, for the next 10 to 15 seconds, I didn't realize what's happened, what's hit me. I was not even aware whether I'm dead or alive. There was a ringing sound in my ears. There was dust all over. There was smell of cordite. There was smell of burnt flesh, and the bunker I was sitting in had almost collapsed. For the next 15 seconds, I was not even aware what's happened to me. But then in the background, I could sense that the Pakistanis had launched a counterattack. They were rushing towards my post, trying to overrun my post. And by the time the dust had settled down, the first thing I heard was I see a personality, firing from my side of the army, my side of the this thing. A person is running, toward firing towards the enemy, running and coming towards my post. I see that my bunker had collapsed, and the first thing he comes firing towards the enemy, stands, and I see Captain Vikram Batra's face. And the first words he said was कि नवीन तो डरना नहीं, मैं आ गया हूँ. भाई गॉड, तब मुझे ऐसा लगा कि साला मैं अभी तक नहीं मरा हूँ, मतलब अभी तक नहीं मरा तो आगे भी नहीं मरूंगा. तो पता नहीं कहाँ से इतना जोश आ गया. मेरा जो AK-47 था वो थोड़ा सा दूर में पड़ा हुआ था. I picked up the AK-47 and started firing towards the enemy. My men down below had also realized कि नवीन साहब को चोट लग गई है and counter attack शुरू हो गया. They also started firing towards the enemy. Somehow we managed to stall the counter attack. And from there on, कैप्टन विक्रम बत्रा मुझे खींच के ले जाते हैं, बिकॉज बंकर हेड कोलैप्स. मेरे दोनों पैर में चोट लगा हुआ है. कुंट got up, मुझे बाहर घसीट के ले गए around 10 to 15 meters. He dragged me. And I don't know how many of you have seen Shersha movie. शेरशाह मूवी में आई एम ट्राइंग टू टेल कैप्टन विक्रम बत्रा, सर मुझे नीचे मत भेजो, आई डोंट वांट टू गो, आई वांट टू फाइट हियर. And he says कि नवीन, we thought you were an engineer, तू तो warrior निकला साला. He says that this thing has been captured. And believe me, this happened. I was not ready to go, I was not ready to get treated myself. I didn't want to leave that picture because I had promised my men that I will not go back from that feature until the tricolor is hoisted. If I have to go back, it will be my dead body, and I will not come back alive. But he being my senior, he ordered me that I should go back and get myself treated. I have to calm down. And I still clearly remember, both my legs injured. I had to crawl down. Our fists met. Captain Vikram Batra and my fists met. He gave me a tap on my back, and he started running up, and I started crawling down. I crawled about 150 meters. 150 meters, because that stretch was exposed. तो मैं 150 meters क्रॉल करते गया. एक बड़ा सा पत्थर था, उसके पीछे जाके बैठ गया. एंड बैठ के दोनों पैर देखा. इट वाज वेरी बैड शेप. राइट लेग तो बिल्कुल ऐसे टैंगल कर रहा था. कोई थोड़ा सा ऐसा पकड़ के खींच देता तो probably that leg would have come apart. And there comes one of my jawan. He picks me up on a shoulder like this, like a gunny bag, and he starts running from one boulder to another boulder. He's running from this boulder to another boulder. By then, I could see the Pakistanis firing. I could see the bullets hitting the ice. They're trying to take a pot shot at me. But God's grace, he carried from one boulder to another boulder to another boulder to another boulder. He started getting me down. And that is the time, you don't realize what's practical and impractical. What I was doing was he's carrying me like a gunny bag and running from one boulder to another boulder. I was turning back. I was trying to look back and see if my leg had fallen apart. I wanted to, I wanted to take it back. I wanted to take it back and give it to the doctor and ask him to stitch the leg, because I didn't want to lose the leg. That is the state of mind I was in, not realizing what's possible, what's impossible. Imagine I got hurt early in the morning, 7th July, early in the morning. By the time they got me down, it was late in the evening. And too much of blood loss, too much of infection. So the moment the doctor saw me, they were horrified seeing the state of my legs. And splinters all over. My entire dangri had become blackish, become reddish. A lot of splinters pierced into my body. And they said, "Ki Naveen, you will be placed under dangerously ill list." That means DIL, matlab dangerously ill list means the chances of survival or otherwise are in equal proportions. So the earliest possible opportunity, you have to be shifted to Srinagar hospital. You have to wait. The helicopter has to take you to Srinagar, which can happen only in the next day morning. So 7th early morning I get hurt. 7th late night I come down. They put me on a sedative, and I go off to sleep, not realizing what's happening on the battlefront. I was not aware what's happening. When they put me the sedative, I went out to sleep. The next day early morning I woke up. The helicopter was waiting for me. Nursing assistant next to me, they woke me up, put me on a stretcher, and with the stretcher I was loaded onto the helicopter. And the helicopter pilot was told not to fly very high, in case if you fly very high, the Pakistanis might sight and shoot a missile at the helicopter. They were told to fly low and go towards Srinagar. The helicopter takes off. I was lying on a stretcher. My nursing assistant was sitting next to me, and we take off, move some distance. And that is the time, at some distance, my nursing assistant woke me up and said, quote unquote, he said, "Sab doctor ने उठने से मना किया हुआ है, but वो देखिए 0.4875 पे तिरंगा लहरा रहा है." Oh my God, I was so happy. I was so elated. Uh, I told myself, Naveen, 0.4875 has been won. Tricolor has been hosted. You have created a history. You have left a legacy out there, no matter how small. Whenever Kargil war will be spoken about, whenever 4875 will be spoken about, your name, matlab, your contribution will also be remembered in its small way. Whether you die, whether you live, is of no consequence. The task which has been given, the mission has been accomplished. I said this to myself, and couldn't resist sitting down and saluting the national flag. I saw the national flag on 4875, saluted it, and when I was about to lie down, That's the time nursing assistant again told me, "Saab, iske liye humne कीमत चुकाई है." He said, "We have to pay a very heavy price for this." मैंने कहा, "हमने क्या कीमत चुकाई है?" He said, "साहब, Captain Vikram Batra नहीं रहे." That was something, that was a big jolt. I couldn't take that. That was something, that was something I just couldn't bear. I went from a semi-unconscious state. I fell down on the stretcher, unconscious. The time I regained consciousness was when I reached Srinagar, when I was taken to the operation theater. That is the time I woke up, and there was too much of blood loss, infection, so I had to be shifted to from Srinagar. I was shifted to Delhi, and to cut the story short, I was in the hospital for 21 months, underwent 8 major surgeries, and then finally, when the doctors felt that surgically my state of my leg cannot be improved, so they declared me medically unfit to serve in army, and then I had to quit the defense forces. And yeah, this is my short, eventful 6 months. Joined in January, got injured on 7 July 1999, stayed in the hospital for 2 years, and then I was out of army. Probably, in that short span of 6 months, I did whatever best I could do, and then that was the end of my career. Yeah, that's it, Jay.
Wow, sir. So speechless. To be very honest, speechless. I forgot everything over here, which I was going to ask. But yeah. So, one thing I would like to know, sir. In your short 6 months, also, you have done so many things, and so we, as the youth of the country, or say we as the citizens, what are the 3 lessons that we can learn from the Indian Army?
3 lessons. There are plenty of lessons which you can learn. Every individual himself, and
Yeah,
the
but
uniformed person himself, yeah, he's a treat to the eyes. You can learn many things out of him. War teaches you so many lessons. Then, in the college when you attend, in the schools when you attend, you come across so many lectures, you come across so many practicals, so many project reports and whatnot. You tend to forget all of them. Most of them you tend to forget. Very few you remember. But war teaches you such lessons we generally don't forget in your lifespan. The first lesson, what I would like to say, not really in that sequence or not really naming 1, 2, and 3. Uh, the fact that irrespective of how the Pakistanis treated our soldiers and how we treated our soldiers, that's a big lesson to be learned in life. And the
wow.
lesson and the message is, keep your moral ethics very high standards. Even
Hmm.
if you win, if you lose, that doesn't matter. Even if you lose from a position of strength. You will stand in front of the mirror and tell, "I have done nothing wrong. I fought. I did my best." That's the first lesson to be learned. You follow your morals, you follow your ethics, you follow your culture, what has been taught to you by our elders. That's to be followed, irrespective of the consequences. The second thing what I'd like to say is, nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible until it's done. You do it and it becomes possible. Impossible is just a state of mind. If you think it's impossible, it's impossible. Nothing is impossible unless it is done. And you all are capable of doing that. To put things in perspective, Captain Naveen Nagap was nothing great. He was just as a normal person as you guys, everybody else. It's just the circumstances which made me do something extraordinary. The circumstances were like that. Because we had belief in ourselves. The Indian Army believed in itself. Imagine people sitting on a post, high on a post, sitting on top in fortified bunkers. All they have to do is remove one border from there, put a weapon there, and take a swipe. No matter how many enemy people start attacking, they'll fall down. In spite of all these dangers, in spite of all these hiccups, we were in the open. It's not swimming against the tide, it is walking against the bullet. We were in open, but still we believed in ourselves. And they say in mountain warfare, the casualty rate, they say, the occupier and the attacker, they say it's 1:8. That means
Oh,
one death of the enemy who is sitting on a fortified bunker on top of the hill, and 8 people will get injured. If you have to kill one, we have to lose 8 of our men. Do you know what's the casualty rate? Do you know what's the ratio of India versus Pakistan? We lost 527 soldiers, and they lost somewhere in 800. That's an ample an example to show that what Indian Army achieved, and this was by sheer grit and determination. And we believed in ourselves. Yes, we'll be able to do that. So have believe in yourself. The next lesson probably was, when I saw the tricolor flying so high, I told myself, Naveen, you have lived your life. You have lived your life. Live your. I've left a legacy out there. You also should do the same thing. Why aim small when you can aim big? Aim big, aim high. I aim very high, and try to leave a legacy. Try to create history. As Swami Vivekananda had told, the history of the world is history of few people who had faith in themselves. So you should have a capability. You should have faith in yourself that you are the one who are going to create history. Believe in yourself, and you can do wonders. And yeah, probably many things to learn from the army. I have learned a lot. And to sum it up, what I would like to say is there were 527 soldiers who sacrificed their lives in Kargil war. 1,300 of them have got injured, and for whom life has never been the same again. Those 527 people sitting on top there, if they have to have a look at us, and they should be ashamed, did we die for these guys? That's the worst thing can happen to anybody. So all you should do is live a life worthy of those sacrifices. That's it.
And sir, what else we can do as the citizens? Like, yes, definitely not all people could stand over there and say protect us. So, what as the citizens or the youth should do, uh, say more for the Indian army or say in general? Like, what goes in the mind of the soldier that yes, we are standing on the border right now and we are protecting all the people out there and they are sleeping with peace, and that's the satisfaction that one soldier has, that because of me, that's what I feel. Okay, so but because of me, I'm there on the border, hence the people are sleeping peacefully right now at their home. But as the citizens, like, what should be our payback to the Indian army?
Okay, let me put it this way. Mm, as I told there were 500 soldiers who have sacrificed their lives. The thing is, as you rightly brought out, that people want to join the defense forces. They want to do something for the nation. There are a lot of calls I also do get, that they join the defense. They want to join the defense forces. They have had their 8 attempts. They are about to cross their age. They were or they got selected. Probably their parents did not agree for them to join the defense forces. There are constraints which a few people willingly, unwillingly, intentionally, unintentionally were not able to don the uniform. But that does not mean life ends there. It is not that you have to serve the motherland only by joining the defense forces. What are the percentage? What is the success ratio of a person joining the defense forces? It's just about 1%. That means 100 people appear, one of them gets into the defense forces. It's 1%, just 1%. What happens to those balance 98%, 99%? And few of them are very hardcore. ये नहीं तो कुछ नहीं, ऐसा नहीं होता. मुझे काफी लोग अप्रोच करते हैं कि मतलब माय लाइफ इज ओवर बिकॉज आई डिडंट गेट सेलेक्टेड फॉर द डिफेंस फोर्स, आई विल नॉट बी एबल टू सर्व द मदरलैंड. It's not so. You don't get selected, don't get disheartened. That's not the end of the life. There are various other means to serve the defense forces. Be ultimately, to sum everything up, as I told earlier also, be a citizen worthy of those sacrifices. You have to behave in such a way that they shouldn't feel ashamed that इसके लिए हमने जान दी क्या अपनी, इस ऐसे लोगों के लिए हमने जान दी क्या. Don't do that. It really hurts. And the last thing I'd like to tell is, मेरा जो we generally recognize the soldiers, the bravery, the awards which have been given. We only idolize them. But what you should understand is, my pain is gone now. Although there is a bit of pain, but the blood has flowed, stopped. The blood doesn't ooze out now. But the tears of the martyrs' families, the dependents, have still not dried. So wherever you get an opportunity, go and meet their families. Go and talk to them. Be with them. Celebrate the birthday of the martyr with them. Cut a cake. Take a cake if possible. Cut a cake with them. Spend some time with them. Don't ever let them feel that they are alone. Because parents at an old age, they would have raised their son, thinking that he'll take care of them in the old age. But in case he is not there, he has sacrificed he sacrificed his life for you and me. it's our inbound duty to take care of their parents now. So whenever you get an opportunity, go to their houses, go to their, pay respects to them, meet them, and make them realize that their son might have gone, but there are other sons also who are ready to shoulder that responsibility of being their children. That's it.
Amazing, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing that. And definitely, I think after hearing this podcast or say listening to the entire podcast, definitely we would take certain kind of steps like this, which would actually create a good environment for everyone. And as you said, that those sacrifices won't go waste. That's for sure. So yeah, thank you so much, sir, for actually sharing your inspiring, courageous, motivational, I don't have more words, story with us, and actually say giving us an entire new perspective about what goes in the preparation of war, what goes during the war, what goes in the mind of a soldier when he's actually fighting there, and what goes after the war also. So thank you so much, sir, for sharing that and also sharing all the life lessons that one should learn. And I hope that everyone who has listened to this podcast and everyone who has viewed this podcast would definitely learn the life lessons and would implement them in their life. Thank you so much, sir, for joining with us
Hope
and
so.
sharing.
Hope so. Thanks, Jay, for giving me this opportunity. Hope the youngsters and the lot who are watching this will take some inspiration. And if they take their inspiration and try to be a better citizen, my job is done. My efforts have not gone in waste. I'm sure, and I'm sanguine with the platform you have given me to address these many guys. I'm sure there will be some sort of an improvement. Thanks, Jay. Thanks once again.
Thank you, sir.